if, from 5 years from now, if I can just kind of learn to lighten it up, that everything does not have to be so make or break intense. If I can allow for a little more flow and have a little more trust in the universe.
Welcome to the Showcast, a show about music, culture, and Memphis.
As we live into our mission of building community through music,
education,
and diversity,
we look forward to interviewing artists, musicians, movers, and shakers about how they're writing their own stories
and building their own communities.
For almost 90 years, the show has stood the test of time as a beacon of hope
in the heart of Memphis.
This podcast is brought to you by Orion Federal Credit Union, where a big part of us is being a big part of the community. Visit OrionFCU.com to see how Orion is redefining banking.
Hey there, welcome to Shellcast. Today we're very, very pleased to welcome Cyrena Wages to our broadcast. Cyrena, thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. A couple of years ago, one of my favorite singles of the year came out, a song called River Bends. Last I heard, you were working on your debut album. Can you give me an update on that?
Absolutely, yes. So, River Bends came out independently, right sort of at the start of the pandemic. It was a song that I recorded in Nashville. But yes, I'm finally working on my first solo project here in Memphis with Mr. Matt Ross-Spang. We're about halfway through the process, and it's been really beautiful. No updates yet as to when anybody will necessarily hear it, but we're getting there, and it's been a really lovely process. I'm super excited. So
at this point in time, are you pleased with the way the record is coming out?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Matt so much. Kind of took a leap of faith, or I should say my musical director, Joe Restivo, took a leap of faith and sort of sent some songs to Matt to see if he'd be interested. And my hopes weren't high on that at all, but he actually totally dug my songwriting, my perspective, and he was pretty quick to be on board. So I was super honored and flattered by that. And then just getting to meet Matt, he's so down to earth. He's so Memphis. He's very approachable and calming. And I think he sort of gets my neurotic, emotional mind. And he puts me very much at ease. And I'm so excited with what we've done so far. We're taking our time. We're trying to get it right. And then we're also trying to get it in the right hands and trying to, there's a million different ways to do this thing. No one way is right, of course, but we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we release it so that we can get it to as many ears as possible. So, yeah.
Surrounding yourself with good people is an excellent start. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, people that are smarter and more talented and more experienced than I, and that has proven to be a wise path forward. So,
well, now one of the things about River Bends that really, really impressed me, an awful lot of people say, "Oh, I've got lots of different influences." You really do. It's hard to pick out what your main influence is. That was wonderful.
Thank you. I'm glad you see that as a good thing.
I really do. I mean, I'm hearing a little bit of old school country, a little bit of soul, a little bit of modern vocalizing. How do you do all that?
I don't know. I think at times in my life, at least from the business, sort of the industry side of things, I think that's been considered a problem. I think music has adapted and the audience has adapted, and therefore the industry has adapted so much that might not be such a problem anymore. But yeah, it's certainly not intentional. I think I grew up listening to a lot of stuff. I listened to, Patsy Cline and Waylon Jennings, and I love Willie Nelson so much. And then I also listened to a lot of Memphis music, and my dad's a huge fan of soul and grew up out near Shelby Forest. And so there's this very Memphis meets country part of who I am and where I came from. And that's definitely shown up in my music. But I also really, really love a lot of modern artists and lyricists. I love, Lana Del Rey and Phoebe Bridgers and a lot of these women who are writing with a very different tone. And so it's kind of become this little melting pot of things. But And who knows what's to come next from that, but it feels honest, and I enjoy where I am right now, which is for the first time just really trying to make things without getting in my own way with all the questions about what genre it's going to fit into. Still definitely guilty of that in moments, but I'm really trying to just freely create and release and let somebody else handle all that stuff. So,
well, my experience tells me it sounds like it's going to be a very honest record.
I hope you're right. I'm definitely sometimes an oversharer. So there's there's some stories that are woven through there, but yeah, it's definitely a very emotionally honest project. So I hope you feel that way as well.
Would you feel that your lyrical influences are the same thing as your musical influences, or do you draw your lyrical inspiration from other sources?
Yeah, I suppose I could answer it two different ways, but I do think it's a bit different. My musical inspiration, I mean, when I was a little girl, my brothers would get so frustrated with me, but I was the youngest child, and in the house singing, I was just running around singing out melodies of nonsense. I wasn't writing lyrics, nor was I even learning the lyrics to the songs that I loved. It was kind of a weird thing. I would know all of these songs, these melodies, from listening to the radio or from listening to my dad's old records, and I would belt them at the top of my lungs around the house using the wrong words. But for me, it was a physical cleansing. Like I had to sing. It just, it was sort of a thing that was impossible to suppress. And then much later, I really started writing songs. I learned to write songs watching my oldest brother, Houston. He moved off to New York when I was in 5th grade. And I remember he'd come home at Christmas and he'd always play the songs that he'd been writing throughout the year. And I was absolutely mesmerized. And we ended up being in a band together many years later, but I still wasn't really much of a writer. I had dabbled with it, but never had the confidence to think that I had anything to share in that department. But I learned from him, and then I really started to try to do it on my own much later in the game. And as that has developed, I read a lot of poetry. I find a lot of insight there. But I also, get a lot of my lyrical inspiration from my own personal journey, my therapy process, the things I struggle with, and how I learn to heal from them. And so, yeah, a bit personal, and then also a bit just, some of the modern artists that I really love lyrically, the Lana Del Reys and the Phoebe Bridgers. And yeah, so I suppose it's kind of two different places that those parts of my music originate from.
Now, you are Memphis born. You moved to Nashville for a little while. You're back in Memphis now. What prompted your move?
To Nashville or?
Both.
Yeah. Okay. So I moved to Nashville when I was 18.
That's all.
I didn't know what I wanted to do for college. I knew, like I said, both of my brothers had gone to New York and LA, and I knew I didn't want to do something that was sort of more the typical path. I wanted to paint outside the lines a little bit, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I don't think I wanted to go to school. My parents kept planting a university in Nashville in my mind to try to see if I would bite. And so I did. I went to Belmont in Nashville. Was there for 4 years, and then I stayed in Nashville for many, many years after that. And I was a member of many Nashville-based bands, and I did the whole thing. I did the whole industry thing. I signed a couple of funny deals, made some really interesting music, some great music, some music I would never want to listen to again. But I did the thing, and I learned so much. And then I don't even know if I could articulate at the time why I knew I needed to move back to Memphis, but that little whisper inside of me was very clear that I needed some space to find my perspective again, find my voice again, and figure out why I started doing this in the first place, and if I was going to continue, how I was going to do it from a place that fed me and nourished me, and rather than what I'd kind of experienced the last couple of years in Nashville. So I moved back to Memphis the very end of 2019 with intentions of sort of splitting time, Memphis and Nashville back and forth. And then obviously the pandemic happened shortly after. So I was here, and it's ended up being the biggest blessing of my life.
What do you think it is about Memphis that spurs the creativity of a musician like yourself?
Man, so much, I think I'm still figuring that out as well. But this place is so raw and sort of my earliest memories of being really struck by music, it's really easy for me to find that reference point again, and to kind of reconnect to the source of it all. And that for me was like, my dad driving me to school in the Rosemark area in his old Cadillac, playing Al Green and Stevie Wonder.
That works.
Yeah. So sort of those visuals, and also just spending a lot of time in Shelby Forest and in our family home in Millington. And like you said, sort of that melting pot of soul music and country music, that is this town for me. And so, I learned so much in Nashville, and most all of it was so important, but I also learned so much that I had to unlearn. And so in order to do that, just being able to be in this place again where I really felt like I could feel my true, honest little soul again was really, really helpful. Just some space to do a big reset,
Want to learn more about how you can support the Overton Park Shell and its mission of building community through music, education, and diversity? Head to overtonparkshell.org. You can read up on our history, check out our schedule of events, visit our shell shop to grab all the swag, and find out ways that you can participate in our mission, whether that's through donations, volunteering, sponsoring a concert, or becoming a member of the Shell Circle. Once again, that's overtonparkshell.org.
I had it described to me one time that a lot of places say you can't do that, but Memphis says, why not? Let's try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That so fits what you're doing, I think, because you work in so many different influences that's great.
Yeah. And I think, it's really important to spend your time in the towns where the industry is really, peaking, and, there is sort of a more thriving music industry in Nashville than Memphis. Not music history by any means. And I don't even know that it'll always be that way from an industry perspective. I think Memphis has really got some mighty leaders who are changing that. But I do think it's really important to go get your butt kicked in, the Nashvilles, the New York, the LAs, to really learn where the bar is,
right here,
how far you likely are from it. And I'm grateful for the decade I put in there, because now I think I know where that bar is. But man, it's so easy, especially if you're like sort of a high achiever type coupled with a highly emotional type. It's so easy to get just sort of stormed over. Yeah, it's really easy to get just sort of ambushed by a million different people's opinions. And at the age that I was when I was in Nashville, I didn't have a, huge cash flow behind me to get my, dreams going. And I felt very desperate and very at the mercy of someone in the industry saying, okay, yes, we'll take you on and you need to do this. So such a classic story, but about 20 different people showed me their path, and I jumped on board because I thought that's what I needed to do. And at some point I had no idea what I was doing anymore. And I sort of woke up to myself and had to get the hell out of there and came back to Memphis. And man, my world has turned upside down, and I'm like finally starting to feel like myself again. And it's beautiful.
That leads into a quote from you that I liked a whole lot. I was looking at some other interviews that people had done with you. Somebody said, what advice would you give to a younger musician? And you said, do some looking in the mirror really early on. Get real with what kind of record you want to make, because the second you put yourself out there, everybody and their mother will have an opinion as to the way it must be done. How did you defeat that?
I mean, I think I don't think I've defeated it. I think I'm still in it in a lot of ways, but just with much more, with much more solid foundation underneath me. It's funny. I talked to Matt and I talked to Joe about this. It's like I've been in this little sort of hideaway period the last couple of years where I've just been doing the creative part, which is what I love. I've been writing my songs and developing my instrument and doing my personal work, which really fills the well for my songwriting. And all of this is so awesome. And then now I'm starting to get back in that place where I got to really play, these bigger shows, and I got to do the photo shoots, and I have to do the really public, like self-indulgent push. And I have to be pitched to labels. And that whole process can still really stir up a lot of feelings of inadequacy, fear of being assessed. It takes me right back to some of those like trickier spots. But I'll say that I've really started to try to redefine what success means to me and to really try to zoom out. Remember that I am so incredibly small and that I have one job, and that is to make people feel something, and the level that happens on is out of my control. And if it is going to, achieve the amount of notoriety or success that I've dreamed up for so long, then it's only going to happen for me if it's done from a place of integrity. And so, yeah, that was a long-winded way to answer your question. I don't know that I've defeated that at all, but I definitely, as I've grown and gained wisdom and tried to, silence the voices outside of me and really listen to the one inside, I definitely have made progress.
I think that's one of the best answers I've ever heard.
Well, we're figuring it out, man. And still in the oven.
Yeah, that's what we can all do.
Still in the oven.
You still working with Diddy TV?
Yeah, a little bit. They've got their hands full, lots of different projects going on. So I'm a very, very small part over there, but I love those guys.
But that's pretty cool too.
Oh yeah, they're great. I mean, when I mentioned people who were trying to bring industry back, to Memphis. Now their thing is not all, Memphis music per se. It's working on an international level, but still facing industry companies in Memphis is really important for our town and for the future of our artists, hopefully being able to stay here and not having to move to another city to do what they love. So yeah, they're great. I love my really dear friend, Sam, over there is brilliant, and he's an incredible writer, incredible mind. And he also plays in the Folk Killers. He's a musician, but he's blown me away with what he's done over there.
Wow.
So yeah, with folks.
It's got to be pretty good at giving you a more complete view of the industry also. The more sides of it you see, the more effective you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spent the first many, many years of my 20s bartending at a rooftop bar in Nashville and like working until 3 a.m. every night. And everyone should also do that. That will teach you a whole lot about the human experience. But I did that for long enough. And when I moved back to Memphis, I was like, I'm going to take on 25 jobs if I have to, as long as I can stay in creative spaces. So to work in art in any way is what I wanted to do. And so I was super lucky to get to work with them.
That's awesome. Another thing that I noticed when I was looking at all the work that you do an awful lot of benefit shows, community service work. How does that tie into your personal philosophy?
Remembering to zoom out, to slap yourself in the face with some perspective. I also just being in this town, and it's hard not to be reminded, particularly in times like this. Our city's been through a lot in the last month or so, to be reminded of how many people need us, how many of our neighborhoods are really terribly neglected, how much poverty, how much lack of education, how much lack of food. There are food deserts all around us. And, we see the really unfortunate and understandable side effects of that playing out in the last little while. And anyways, so yeah, I think there's lots to me. And I think as I have grown and, like I said, try to redefine what success is for myself, I think I want a 3D life. I don't just want to be a musician, but I really do want to have alignment in all the things that I do.
Sure.
Yeah. And we've also had a lot of fun throwing these charity events. We've had such a great time, and people have really gotten behind it. Memphis is the best. There's no place like this in the world. And it's been cool to see people of all different ages, races come together to try to help some of our neighbors. So
that's one of the things I love about the show so much, to be honest with you. Every time we have a show, just seeing all the people coming together and just having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only the diversity of your programming, but also, the audience. It's the coolest thing. It's the coolest thing about Memphis. And yeah, props to you guys. Well done.
Well, you've done so much. You've got so much in the fire. You got so much ahead of you. Cyrena 5 years from now looks at Cyrena today. What does she think as far as I did the right things, I'm successful? What would it take for you to feel that way?
What a beautiful question. I think, as hard as it is to say for me sometimes, I think and hope I'll be proud of sort of the grit I've had to muster to keep trying to do this thing. I'm not 22 years old and I'm after it still. And, the 100 no's before a yes thing, it's like 2 million no's before a yes. And just like the resilience to get back up and to keep trying to evolve and reinvent yourself and sort of muster through the vulnerability of having to put yourself up in front of people while holding all of the, understandable insecurities or fears. And so I think that there'll be a lot of pride, but also if, from 5 years from now, if I can just kind of learn to lighten it up, that everything does not have to be so make or break intense. If I can allow for a little more flow and have a little more trust in the universe that this thing that I feel destined to do is going to find its way to fruition, and I don't have to, I don't have to grip it to death to get it there. I think that'll definitely, sort of get me a bit out of my self-involvement and a little bit more aware of the things around me that are happening that are so important. But also, I think it'll help my music and my creativity and my ability to communicate the emotions that so many of us feel. So if I can just free it up, baby, just lighten it up, grow the confidence, trust, and let it go. I think that's definitely something that I'm aiming for in the next season of my life.
Well, it sounds to me like you're putting an awful lot of that together. You've got the talent, you've got the sense of fun, the sense of community. I can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Oh, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate all that you guys do, and that you wanted to take the time to talk to me. Such an honor.
It is an honor for us as well, and thank you for your time. So looking forward to seeing you on stage. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. I got a beautiful band, and these guys are the best in the world, and
awesome.
We're nervous as can be, and we can't wait.
Well, wonderful.
Thank you.
Cyrena, thank you again for the time, and we will meet again.
Cheers, Silver. See you soon.
Be well.
Right.